Hey, what's going on, man? Coach Tyler here with Black Diamond Softball and Fitness. We got a brand new episode of the Foul Pole to Foul Pole podcast for you. Recently, had a chance to sit down with Cory Huminsky. You guys know her as Coach Cory Fastpitch on Facebook, and a lot of you girls know her as your own personal pitching instructor. She's a former Pitt standout. She's a pediatric cancer survivor. She's also an NFCA endorsed pitching instructor. She's got a lot on her plate, and she's got a lot to say. Let's check it out. Well, Cory, you got started at a young age playing the game. Kind of tell us when it went from this is something fun to, hey, this is something fun, but it's also something serious.
Yeah. So the very, very beginning happened when I was born in Orange County, California, and I started playing softball. It's kind of like the capital of softball at that time. Everyone played, all my friends played, and I got started there, and it was pretty competitive, like out of the get-go. I mean, I had a little T-ball kind of stuff in the beginning, but then, you're on a team and you're playing and you're Belinda Youth Softball and you're just going. And we ended up moving when I was like 8 years old. We moved to Colorado, and my dad, found a local team, an organization, got me involved again. And it was, I mean, I don't really remember having softball without it being super competitive and kind of playing every weekend, practice twice a week or more.
Right.
I met my pitching coach when I was like 12 or 13. So like it kind of got competitive fast. I played a little bit of basketball too. But softball kind of just took over. I liked it. I was good at it. We had a good team and pretty much did it all the time.
Yeah. And when did, I guess, like that competitive travel sort of take that next step to where you weren't playing as many tournaments, but it seemed like you were playing the bigger tournaments, and at the time as a child, it was like the end all be all. It was like the world revolved around these tournaments.
Yeah. Probably I would say, I mean, even in 12U, I mean, we won the USSSA College World, or not college, USSSA World Series. It happened to be hosted in Colorado at the time. So we played in that and we won it. And I think when we won it, that kind of was like, hey, we're pretty good. And so we started like bumping up the tournaments. I mean, we went to Las Vegas every year for a tournament there. We went to ASA Nationals down in Texas twice, I think. We went to Illinois and Kentucky, maybe, or Tennessee. Like, so we started traveling a lot once we started winning a lot. We won the states championships for ASA in Colorado a lot. But I think it really started at 12U because we did win such a big tournament so young that we realized we had a lot of potential. So we kind of just started going.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of travel.
What are some of the differences that you see now, just in the few years that you've been removed from playing travel to now coaching, young athletes or instructing young athletes? Like, what are some of the changes that stand out to you the most in your experience?
I think the biggest change that I've seen is I did not play a single game between November, probably because in Colorado, softball for middle school and high school is in the fall, not the
Mm-hmm.
spring.
Mm-hmm.
So we do summer ball, then go straight into middle school and high school ball. But we were done by like end of October, I believe. So November, December, January, February, even part of March, we did not play a single game. We didn't scrimmage anybody. We didn't play indoors. We just had team practice maybe once or twice a week. Pitching lessons, or if anyone took hitting lessons or something like that, they may have done that, but we didn't do any of that. So the whole winter was time to work on your skills, to get stronger, to practice a lot. I did so many drills, and then we'd get together, March, April, and have 2-3 times a week practice outside as a team, and then start the travel, and practice schedule. Now the girls like never stop playing, and I have mixed opinions on that. I mean, I think it's cool that they want to keep playing and it's a great environment. I also see, like, at least from the pitching perspective, I need time to like fix stuff, right? Like break down mechanics or learn a new pitch or whatever. But if the kid is constantly playing,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm like, okay, we need to fix this part of your motion. but when can they do that? Because they have to go pitch in a game this weekend or pitch in a Cage Wars. And when you're competing, you're not focusing on your form, you're trying to win.
Right.
And so I find that to be very challenging from a standpoint of trying to like fix stuff. Now, a kid who maybe doesn't have a major mechanical issue to fix, playing as much, I don't think is as big of a deal, but learning new pitches and finding practice time, they're just tired, they're exhausted, they're getting sore. Your body needs rest too. So that's the biggest change I see by far out of anything.
You're right, man. I made a point this year that we weren't going to start our fall ball playing until September, and we were done. I think we played our last one the middle of November, and there's a lot of people still playing around and doing stuff, but it's almost like, what are you playing for? Like, what are you trying to get out of it? Are you playing just to play? And I get that side of it. Honestly, I do. But there's other things in life too. It's not just softball. I know we're wrapped up in it. And before we started talking about it or recording it, we, how much our lives revolve around the game. But I want these girls to have the opportunity to play other sports or to do other things and not feel like they're going to let Coach Tyler down, or they're going to let their teammates down because they're not able to show up to this camp or this practice or this tournament. And it kind of goes into that mental state. So what do you think playing 13 months out of the year does to, these younger athletes, the mental state?
Sure. I mean, I'll personally, even with not playing 13 months out of the year, when I graduated from college, I had a little bit of like a moment of not being sure what to do with myself, because I had always done softball. And so it was, and I always kind of like, I was good at softball. I got, people would know about me because of softball. Right. So then it was like, well, so what am I good at if I'm not good at softball? Like, I don't have that anymore. Right. It's done. I've graduated. So, I got really into school and like what I was studying and whatnot. And I actually started baking a little bit and stuff like that and getting into gardening, but like, I didn't really do any of that stuff when I was younger. And so I think that if I had been playing year round too, like, I think your identity becomes very softball oriented. And I think then it makes it a little challenging once softball is over to be like, well, what do I do now? What else do I like? I've never tried other things. I do think mentally it makes them kind of, that's what life is softball. Yeah. All the time. And I think it happens to their parents a little bit too, because they're doing softball with them all the time. And you're right. A lot of my kids, when I ask them like, so what happened in that game? Like, what made you kind of have that breakdown? And usually it's, I just don't want to let down my parents, or I don't want to let down my coaches, or I'm afraid my teammates are going to be mad at me because I didn't pitch well or something. So I think a lot of their value is in their performance. And, I think that's tough on a kid, because especially when you're 13 years old, you're not going to be playing great every single time you go out on the field. Like, that's a lot of pressure to put on.
Yeah, there's such a fear of failure nowadays, and it's not that fear of failing and letting yourself down. We all have that because we're humans. But it's just so much pressure, and it seems like it's from the parental side, and it's almost like social media too. Like you've got to have something that you can post, and it comes to the parents with the medals and the trophies, and we played this and we did that. What do you think what do you think the impact of social media has had on the relationship between a parent and a player?
Huge. I mean, that's something I did not grow up with. It didn't exist. We did not have social media. And I look at it these days, I'm like, I honestly don't know how I would have handled seeing me make that error on the field 100 times on repeat over and over on TikTok. Like that, you kind of want to flush those things away. And then here it is repeating. So what those kids, mentally focus on now to get through that, I think that's amazing. In some ways, I think maybe because they grew up with it, they're a little better about it, because it's kind of always been how life was like. Whereas, you or I, that would have been something totally new. That would have been something you didn't expect. I mean, for me, it was more like newspaper articles, right? But no, as a parent, I mean, I see it. I mean, I am friends with a lot of the girls that I coach as parents on Facebook, and every weekend they do post, how their kid did. And if your kid didn't do well, you don't have anything to share. You don't want to share. I mean, I think that's, it is probably a little bit of pressure on the kid. They see it too. I don't know about the relationship. I do see a lot of my kids, as soon as they pitch, if they make a mistake, they look straight at mom or straight at dad. Um, so I do think that constant approval is needed there. So I guess maybe if parents would also post, and I do see some parents who will post about other things that their kids do, which I think is really good.
Yeah.
But not always.
I wish that's, we saw more of that, like talking
Yeah.
about grades or talking about something with the church or volunteering or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's almost like some parents are using it as like an accessory, like it's a handbag or a new scarf or something like that. We played in this tournament this weekend, and it's always it's the same thing. It's if they lost, there was some reason why they lost. This team had guest players, or it was the umpire's fault. If they won, they played against the absolute best team in the country. And our girls, they're the only ones that were there from 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight. It was either super hot or it was super cold. And it's all this like sensationalism that goes on with it.
Yeah. Oh, my favorite growing up, and also what I see with some of my girls, is when the coach is like, "Oh, we lost because we just weren't hitting today. Our bats just weren't here." I'm like, "How about that pitcher just pitched awesome and we didn't hit well?" Like, give credit sometimes where credit is due. But I feel like you're right. It is always like a excuse, like, "Oh, our bats just weren't on today." Well, maybe they weren't on because that pitcher was awesome, and just admit that she was really good. Like, that's okay too.
Do you think we'll get back to development being the number one priority, or do you think it's a lost cause now where it's just like winning for whatever reason means more than anything? It doesn't matter if you win a pack of gum or if you win some medal. I mean, it's like we put so much into the winning.
Yeah, there is a lot into the winning. I don't know. I think that might also, like, and this is kind of going down another path, but I know the last time I was at the NSCA convention, I think is when we were in San Antonio last year. There was like an umpire meeting too, and one of the coaches said that they would like to ask when the umpires decided to change their zone to be like a tiny little square right in the middle, because they'd like to know when that happened and if we can change that. And I laughed because it was funny, as you are, but it's also true. And I think until like at least from the pitching perspective, I used to be able to hit corners, move the ball, stretch the zone, make people go after my pitches. And I think sometimes, and I've seen it in games I've gone to watch my girls play in too, where I'm like, that is a strike, and yet they are calling it a ball. So like until they're not really allowing the pitcher to show their skills. They're kind of forcing them to throw the ball over the plate, and then we get hits. And then, but I think everyone loves the big hits. That's part of the show, right? It's more of a home run game than like I like to watch the pitchers duel 0-0, 1-1 ball game, but I think people like scores in softball games now are like huge. I can't remember a single game I played in that like the scores were like 10-12. That didn't happen very often. It was like low scoring. So I think until like those skills where you need to like make the diving play, you need to hit the corner, have that great breaking pitch, until those skills can like, I don't know, be used more, maybe then we'd get into more developing the skills. But I almost feel now it's like a who can bash the ball the hardest kind of game. I feel that softball to me seems like it's turned into that a little bit.
You're right.
Which is a little different to me.
I had a chance to sit down and talk with Michelle Smith, one of probably I call her the GOAT, but
I would agree.
We talked about changing the game a little bit to give the pitchers a little bit more, not necessarily an advantage, but we have these bat manufacturers that are making these bats that are incredible.
Crazy.
You can't move fences because I always use Georgia Tech as an example. You can't put the stadium on the interstate. There's no room for it to go, and that's just an example of a lot of the colleges and universities around the country. So
absolutely.
Where's the money going to come from? That was Michelle's point. Where's the money going to come from to change the field? So probably not. the one thing that's probably the easiest thing to change or to have an effect, maybe deaden the ball a little bit. So I want to get your opinion on that. You may have pitched with a ball without seams that are, that are risen up a little bit, but the seams and the control and the ball that the pitchers are throwing and stuff, what change would work for you guys to where you still have the same grip on the ball, you still have the same action on the ball, but also maybe deaden it like they did in baseball? What's your opinion, being a pitcher and a pitching coach and instructor? What do you think is the best thing to do to sort of slow the game down a little bit?
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that. I think I mean, obviously I prefer to have a ball that has good seams that I can spin the seams, make the ball move. I think actually something that I struggled with, and I see some of the girls struggle with, is I only played one game my entire career on turf. Every other game I played was on dirt forever. And on that one game in the turf, I actually kind of had a hard time with it because, there was no reading the bounce of the ball because it was consistent. It's the same. The balls can almost go faster off the dirt or off the turf because it's so smooth. So I feel like hits just fly to the outfield really fast. The balls tend to be more kind of slick in my opinion because they're not getting roughed up by the dirt like they used to. So I think, I don't know, to me, I'd love to see dirt come back. I know that's hard for it's harder for field maintenance.
Yeah.
But we live in Pittsburgh here and it rains all the time. And I know Pitt softball field has a turf outfield, but it's dirt infield because Pitt, playing on turf when it's wet, the ball is wet constantly. It's fat. That's a totally different thing too. So I don't know if changing Pittsfield to turf would behoove them because it's, that'd be hard. So, I don't know.
That's the thing.
Lot to think about.
Yeah, there's no glaring answer that says, hey, if we changed this is what would happen, because it affects a lot of stuff. Back in 1988, they changed the distance from 40 to 43 in the collegiate game. And Mike Condrea back then was talking about that. And he had mentioned that before, when the pitchers were at 40, there was such an advantage. You're looking at games that are 1-0, 2-1, that kind of stuff, tighter game. Well, they back it up a little bit to that 43. Now the game opens up a little bit more because at the time it was thought that you're giving the hitter the advantage of allowing them to see the ball. And there's a tenth of a second difference at a 55-mile-an-hour pitch or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but and my opinion of that is it gives that pitcher, especially nowadays, the pitcher has just as much of an advantage, I think, because it allows the pitch to move. What is your opinion when you're talking from your 12U girls going from 40 to 43? What do you see that is good for them, that it's hey, look, now this pitch moves, but them also overcoming that fastball isn't getting there as fast as it was because we've backed up just a little bit? So what is something that you see from that change? And of course, this change happened in 2011 for NFHS, but the college changed back in 88.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest change I see is the girls in 10U and who 10U, 12U, who dominate because they're fast, right? So when they move back to 43 feet, they get I guess a little bit slower, but that was their advantage, right? They were fast. But I see that the girls who have learned to spin the ball, who can move the ball, when they move back to 43 feet, their balls move more. So they now have a little bit of advantage. So often what I see is the girls who have been either just really focusing on speed, that's all that matters to them, is how fast do I throw. They find that they're maybe not as dominating as they used to be. And someone who maybe is still quick, I'm not saying slow, but still quick, but has more movement, spent more time on spins, they now have a little bit of an advantage. So sometimes, I start to see some girls who, maybe who always were so powerful and blowing out the ball by everyone, are now still doing well, but maybe not as well as they used to be doing, because batters are also getting better as you get older. Yeah. And kind of they only have this one tool in their toolbox that they rely on, which was that speed. And then you've got some girls who maybe, they couldn't rely on just being the fastest person out there. So they learned other things, change of speed, movement, really focused on hitting their locations. And now they have a little bit of an advantage as we've moved back, because now they've got other things going on to help fool these batters who are also getting better, which we have to, pitch to this better batter. We need more tools in our toolbox. So I see that a little bit. And I was never the pitcher that blew everybody away with their speed. So I kind of was one of those people who had to have other things that I was good at to do well. So I liked the change in distance, which for me didn't happen until I went to college, because I still played at 40 feet through 18U. That they changed that. I'm not sure when that changed, but more recently.
Yeah. It's different for young athletes to understand that, man, 35 feet at the 10U level for the most part is, super close. So the advantage that those girls have that can really throw it, and you kind of, the coaches, the parents, the players, they all fall in love with that. So there's not as much focus on trying to get the ball to spin yet. And then at 40, there's, you start to give the advantage back to the hitters at the youth age. And then I think at 43 is that happy medium. It's like you said, hitters have gotten better. They're a little bit more established. And these pitchers now can establish not just the fastball and the changeup to have two speeds. Your better hitters are starting to learn and understand that you need more adjustments than that. You need three speeds. Ideally for me, as a coach, not a pitching coach, but I like my pitchers to have three speeds, something that is in between there that you can change, not just changing planes, but changing speeds. As a pitching coach, what's your opinion on multiple pitches, and everybody's different. I get it. Everybody's unique, but as a generality, and how you approach it with these younger athletes, when do you start implementing either a different pitch or changing speeds and stuff like that? What is something that you look for to make sure that athlete's ready for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not cookie cutter, but I kind of have like a mental, this is what we have to do to move on to this step kind of thing. And, we have to be able to have pretty good mechanics so we can throw our fastball and hit spots. If we can't locate our fastball, we don't have that control, there's really no use in learning something new. And I have had people who don't want that, so they don't want to come to me for pitching, because I want them to learn change up, curveball, rise ball at 12. Well, I'm not doing that. So, I firmly believe if you can't locate your fastball, then you have no business learning anything else yet. So, the girls know, like, if they want to learn a changeup, they have to go practice hitting their spots and working on their mechanics so they look pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be pretty good. Then I'll teach them a changeup, because you have to start being able to change speeds. If a pitcher doesn't have a changeup, it's really hard to be really good. It's, you got it. And you might not have the best changeup for a while. I mean, I don't think my changeup got good till I was in high school. I think I messed around with it, struggled with it, but I had it and it was something I could use. But you have to have one. And then once you're able to kind of spot both pitches, then I think it's time to start learning to move the ball. And I think where you start and what pitch you start with varies from pitcher to pitcher. Some kids have natural tendencies to do certain movements. It might be a little easier for one girl to throw a curve or one girl to throw a drop. So we kind of move in that direction. But I'm a firm believer you have to have that fastball that you can locate and that changeup, and then at least be really good at two other things. I would say you have to be good at one other thing. It's best if you can be good at two other things. Right. And so I'm really a fastball, changeup, and two other pitches kind of person, because honestly, on a pitching staff, if you have a good coach, they're going to look for someone who complements their pitchers. Because if you have, one girl who throws a curve and a drop and she's really fast and she starts getting hit, right? She's, we need to switch up the pitching. We can't put in a clone of that first pitcher, right? Their team's going to hit them. So they need something different. So they might want someone that either has different speed that's coming at them, like maybe someone who does pitch a little slower, or if you happen to have someone who throws really fast, sure, but a change of speeds and different pitches. So like maybe someone who has a great rise ball or something like that and a killer changeup, and that goes in when you pull the other girl out, and then the team sees something different. So good coaches have a pitching staff with pitchers who are different. They don't just have four girls that do the same thing, because then you're not replacing your pitcher. So I always tell the girls, you don't have to be great at everything. You just have to be really good at like two things. And if you're really good at that, then they'll find a place for you because they'll find someone who complements you. So that's what I teach. That's what I believe. That's how I was. I mean, I learned all the pitches, but I was really good at the changeup, the drop ball, and I threw a screwball as well. And so that was kind of more my bread and butter. And we had a girl, you know, I always played with girls who had great curveballs. And, you know, although I threw one, it wasn't my best pitch. So like, you know, there was someone who complimented me. So I think if girls know that too, it takes a little bit of the pressure off. And I wish parents would know that too, because you don't have to be great at everything. That's hard. I don't know anyone who's great at everything.
You're right. Right? Well, so that kind of leads me into a point. Talk a little bit about not having to have a pitch as your greatest pitch, just being able to show them something different, almost like a setup pitch, where you're not trying to throw this pitch for a strike. You're just showing them and the coaches and the rest of them that this is in the bag of tricks.
Yeah, no, I mean, I firmly believe the reason you get batters out is because you fool them, right? You're trying to get them off balance. You're trying to mess up their timing. That's how you get people out. And it doesn't have to be a strikeout, like a dinky ground ball or a pop fly. Like you won. They did not get a good hit off of you. So in order to do that, not only do you have to change speeds, but you have to move the ball inside and outside, and you have to change levels, right? We have to go high and low. Like girls practice all the time, hitting the outside corner and hitting the inside corner. Like that can't be all you rely on. You have to move the ball. Yeah. And then you have to work on the spins. So, you know, I can't express enough how important it is to be able to move things around and be different and take one pitch. Like maybe you don't throw a great rise, but you can throw it. So throw it up in the zone for a ball. They might swing. You never know. But you kind of set that up for then something to come in different, like maybe a curve or a changeup or something. But that way you're, you know, showing them different stuff because you're trying to get them off balance. That's the goal. I mean,
talk how many times a little bit about that uniqueness in my rise ball doesn't look like your rise ball. And I might throw it a little bit different. I might have this action while you have this action, and why it's a good thing for coaches to embrace that, not having, like you had just mentioned, four pitchers that do it all the same, letting them kind of own that uniqueness.
Yeah. I mean, the more different a pitcher can be, the more it changes, you know, things for the batter. I mean, even if you have one of those girls that has a little bit of a funky windup, or, you know, I just watched a girl the other day who, before she pitches, she like sits there for a long time, like an annoyingly long time. And I was like, God, this annoys me. Why isn't she going? I was like, but you know what? I bet it annoys the batter too, because they're sitting there waiting and waiting. Yeah. So like you put someone in like that who just like waits a long time and then pitches, and then someone else who pretty much gets the ball, gets their sign and goes. Even that's different, and they have to adjust to that. Righty pitchers, lefty pitchers, you know, anything that looks different. You know, I think if you're a coach that really wants to have a great staff, you try to find a righty pitcher, a lefty pitcher, someone with something funky that they do, someone who maybe throws slow. Like, how many times have you gone to a tournament and seen a girl who's throwing, you know, 50, and yet she's getting everybody out? And you're like, why are they not hitting this girl? But the girls get used to the faster pitching. That's what they practice all the time. So you, again, having lots of tools in your toolbox as a coach, get pitchers who are different. Don't like, I don't want 4 of the fastest pitchers in my community. That's great. But like once the team starts hitting one of them, like they're probably going to hit a lot of them. So you have to have a mixture. I think that's extremely important.
Talk about what you went through high school wise, and then even in pitching in college, when you didn't have a pitch that day, or just like, man, I cannot throw this thing, and it could go from inning to inning. What are some of the mental stuff that you would go through, that some of the adversity that you had faced and were able to overcome?
Sure. I think what I usually had to focus on the most was just like because if I had a day where all my pitches were working, that's a miracle. That does not happen that often, right? Um, you know, the pitch you've been throwing the longest, and this is also kind of something I get on a soapbox about, but a lot of people don't want to throw their fastball. Um, but there are very few people that throw like a completely flat fastball. Like everyone has a little bit natural something on it.
Right.
So you've been throwing that, right, since ever you started pitching, like 8 years old. And that's the pitch you learn to locate, right? So the one thing that I did not experience was ever having my fastball like where I couldn't throw it to a spot, right? Like that, if that had ever happened, that would have been different. Like, I don't know. I probably would have had more of a mental, like, uh-oh, what's happening moment. But, I could always locate my fastball and I knew I could do that. I had confidence in that. So if something wasn't working, let's say my drop wasn't working, then I just said, all right, well, I'm going to replace that with my fastball and I'm going to hit low spots with my fastball and I'm going to nail them. Right. So, I'm keeping the ball off the plate. And even though it's a little flatter than my drop ball, it's still got something on it. But I had confidence that I could locate it. So I think every kid needs to have something that they are like 100% confident that they can do. And if that's just locating their fastball, that's huge. I mean, a lot of girls can't do that. So if you can do that consistently, then if something's not working, don't freak out. Like, throw the fastball and it will work for you. Maybe you'll get back on track. Maybe you can go spin something in between innings or something and figure something out. But I think that's huge. And I think the girls knowing that they can talk to their coach about that is also huge, because I see a lot of, this is the pitch I called, throw this pitch. There's very little pitcher can call off pitches or suggest pitches or any of that. So I think, because I've asked some girls, like, because I had one girl who her rise ball wasn't working very well. And I said, well, why don't you just throw your fastball high and inside? So at least you're getting something up in the zone. She's like, well, I don't, but my coach won't let me do that. And it might sound bad, but I was like, will your coach even know? Because she tried to ask him, could we do this? And he didn't want to. So then I suggested just do it anyways, because if you can nail it, nail it. So she did. She started doing it. And the guy's like, great rise ball. Yeah. And I felt bad, but like, if the coach isn't going to listen to their pitcher and they're not going to communicate and they're going to force them to throw something that they're not comfortable with, which I'm not sure why you would do that in the first place, but then the pitcher has to start to, at the end of the day, they're the one releasing the ball out of their hand. So they have to start making decisions as to what they know they can do when they're on the mound.
Yeah. I think, honestly, the number one thing that travel managers should do is learn how to communicate with their athletes, not just talk at them and tell them stuff, but to learn how to communicate, because there's nothing worse than having a kid go warm up and you don't know what was just working, what she couldn't get over, what she's struggling with. And now she's going to go out there. She's too scared to shake you off. She's too scared to of what could happen if she doesn't throw that pitch, because how you've made that relationship. So with me and my athletes that are pitchers, I don't take them most of the time. Very seldom have I ever actually done this. Take a kid from like third base and throw onto the mound, or take a kid from center and throw on the mound. I always have a pitcher or two that's on the bench, so they have an actual chance to warm up and then let me know, hey, coach, my fastball is on, drop is working. All right, good to go. And then we move from that. You don't have that opportunity if you're taking your third baseman to say, hey, I know you warmed up 30, 45 minutes ago. I need you to get these 5 pitches in, and then I need your whole arsenal ready to rock and roll. You're putting that kid in a very bad spot, and you're about to crush her confidence. So speak on that just a little bit about having a kid, to be able to have communication with that coach, and then what they can do to get through that warm up, and some tips so they know what's working and be able to kind of voice that.
Yeah, I mean, what you just explained is actually something that has happened to several of my pitchers before. They come and explain to me that they didn't pitch well. And I'm like, all right, well, what happened? And then they say, well, we started at 9 a.m. So I warmed up around like 8 a.m. and I didn't pitch the first game. And then the second game happened and I was playing outfield. And then they pulled me in the middle of the second inning and told me to start pitching. And I got 5 warm-up pitches like on the field, right? Like with the umpire. And then I had to pitch. And like I walked the first 2 batters, or like I hit someone and I'm like, but when did you warm up? At 8 a.m. and what time was it? Like, and it's like hours. And I'm like, okay, well, that's problem number one. I don't know who could do well in that scenario.
You can't.
But their coaches, yeah, they don't give warm-up time. So yes, that's another thing that I don't understand. You know, if you want your pitcher to go in and perform well, you have to set them up to perform well, which means 100% they have to warm up. My opinion on that, and I know we have like back-to-back games and it can be difficult, but you know, I think in the morning, who's going to pitch that day? You have 3 girls who are going to pitch. Warm them all up at 8 a.m. Unless you know for sure you're not going to use someone, but injury could happen, right? Someone could get hurt with our play. You just never know. I would warm them all up in the morning where you have time, because you know you don't start till 9, for them to warm up all their pitches and feel good, right? So everybody's pitched a little, they're loose. And then see how the games go. But if you think that you might need to put someone in, then if they need to be in the field, then when they come into the dugout, when they're, you know, you're hitting and they're not up to bat, then they should be off to the side, throwing 10, 15 pitches in between innings, just in case, to either a coach or a backup catcher who's not playing that game or something, you know, to keep yourself loose. And if you're not playing that game, like you're sitting, then you should be out pitching every inning, every couple of innings, to make sure you're loose. And if, you know, someone has to be there to help you with that. So either a net to throw to, or a catcher or a coach or something, someone who can warm you up. But I also do think sometimes that does come down to the kid as well. Like they need to communicate that. And I think kids don't always want to talk to their coach, and that could be on the kid, but it could also be on the coach if they're not making themselves like approachable or available to talk to. But yeah, I mean, the kids should be warming up, you know, throughout the day if needed, because you just never know what could happen. You could pitch the first game, someone else starts the second game, and then they get a line drive and then they're out and you need to go back in. You just always kind of have to be prepared, but you have to be given the opportunity to warm up. You know, I mean, to be honest, one of my students told me that happened to them in college, and that blew my mind even worse. I'm like, they didn't warm you up in college? Like, so it happens at every level, to be honest.
What's the most pitches you threw in a short amount of time, like in a tournament, like a day tournament or a 2-day tournament or something like that? I mean, because pitch count stuff like that it's a big topic in baseball. I think it should be brought up more in softball. So, you know, talk me through sort of your opinion on it and your experience with throwing a lot of pitches and kind of the recovery that comes with that.
Sure. I mean, I distinctly remember the time I threw the most. We were in nationals in, I think, Kentucky, and I was like 16 or 17, I believe. And we played our first bracket. Maybe it wasn't our first. I don't remember. It was in the morning though. We played a bracket game and we lost, and it was a double elimination tournament. And so then the next game I pitched and we won. And then the next game he kept me in and I pitched and we won. I pitched 5 back-to-back games in Kentucky in the middle of like a heat wave where they were telling people to stay indoors, and I'm outside pitching. That was rough. And what happened is we, you know, we had one pitcher who was having trouble with the heat and she wasn't feeling well. So she was not playing as much. And she was someone who would pitch a lot. And we had someone else who at the time just wasn't having their best day. It happens to all of us. But, you know, I was pitching well, but I don't even know how many pitches I threw. I mean, they were full, like 6-7 inning games, 5 back-to-back-to-back. So I can only imagine how many they were.
Yeah.
And I was exhausted. You know, I got to a point where I was just literally praying that the ball went forward, because I like everything hurt and I was tired, and, you know, but I'm a competitor. So I pushed through it. I remember the next couple of days, I couldn't move. I was so sore. I mean, luckily I didn't end up actually injuring myself. I was okay. But that probably would have been an opportunity where someone could have gotten seriously injured. I mean, and not just me pitching. I mean, even all the girls out there playing 5 back-to-back games in the heat of the day. I mean, that's a lot for anybody.
Yeah.
So that was the most I ever pitched, and I would not recommend that to anybody. Usually though, I would say on a typical tournament, I would pitch 2 to 3 games in a day, depending on pool play and bracket play and all of that. Usually we kind of did an every other game kind of switch, because there were 2 of us that pitched the most.
Mhm.
You get to college, 2 game or 3 game series, if it was just two, I would usually pitch one. And then if it was a 3 game, I often pitched two. So like the first game on the double day and then the single game on the next day. That was typically what happened in college for me. And those were usually full 6, 7 inning games. I didn't now I think pitchers pitch 2 to 3 innings and they switch a lot. I think some of that has to do with like these crazy bats out there these days, the umpire zone trying to mix stuff up. I pretty much pitched full games almost every time I pitch. So that's something different that I also see now and then. But I do think it's something that should be watched. I think you can easily overthrow and get hurt, especially if someone has bad mechanics and, or starts getting really tired and starts getting into bad mechanics.
Yep.
That's when you can hurt things. And then they never stop and they never rest, year round. So then there's not time for stuff to heal even.
Yeah.
So
I'm
yeah.
all about safety. I mean, like I said, I'm a daddy of 3, so I'm all about safety. And I try to take care of the kids as much as possible because they only get to play this. They only have their youth, for so long. And then, I don't want to take something away from injuries, but I also don't want to pull them off the field. And the last thing I want to see is a kid that's exhausted and pitched all day or whatever. She doesn't want to move and defend herself as a pitcher and take one off the mask or, the knee or the chest. You know what I mean? So I'm big on that. Do you like the trend now where it's sort of like baseball to where you have your starter, you have your setup, and then you might have a specialist and then you have a closer? I mean, there's a lot of colleges and universities that are going to that model, having more active pitchers.
I think so because I think the hitters are so good and, pitchers, I think if they know their role and they know what they're expected to do, it makes the game a little less like daunting. It's not like, okay, I have to go shut this team out for 7 innings, right? Like that's a long time. But if I know, okay, I need to get in here and get through the batting order once and just get through these girls and try not to give up runs. Like that's a little bit more of like a goal, like a small goal that you see, like just get through this. And you have someone else who maybe can come in and be more of your meat and potatoes and go for a couple innings. And then you have someone come in who's different, funky, has a great rise ball or is slower, has a ton of spinny stuff, something that just throws them off. I think it shares the workload. It shares the pressure. Everyone has, a role in mind. Mm-hmm. It also helps make everyone feel like they're part of the team, not like I'm the starter and I'm just the backup and I like don't pitch that much. I'm not important. When in reality, that person's super important. They're just not getting as much opportunity to pitch.
Right.
So I think it allows everyone to feel like they're part of the team. They have a role. They know what's expected of them and what they need to have like on point. And I like it. And I think it also sparks competition because, I firmly believe part of the reason I got to where I was because there was another girl on my team growing up who saw the same pitching coach as me, who was on my team for like 7 years, who was good. And she's my teammate. She's my fellow pitcher. She's my friend, but there's also that competition. Like I wanted to be better and I know she wanted to be better. And I think because we both felt that way, like we pushed each other to get better and better. And I think then on a team, if you have other girls that are good, that can push each other to, earn starting roles or, earn that relief spot, whatever spot they want. Some girls like to be the relief. Some girls don't like to come in the middle of the game. I mean, so you find what works for which pitchers and they have someone to compete with. And I think it brings a healthy, like we're a pitching staff. We're not just one person is the show and everyone else is there in case she has a bad day. Yeah. So I like it.
Well, you talked about having that healthy competition and, teammates, and eventually you get to a point where, I can play this game in college. You've done all this through high school and stuff like that. Take us back through your recruiting journey. I mean, every recruiting journey is unique, and kind of tell us, how you went through it and where you ended up and that kind of stuff. Because I guarantee you it's different than it was in today's world of recruiting.
Yeah. I mean, so I remember when the recruiting part first started, it was, create a video to send mail a VHS, or maybe it was a DVD by then, I don't know, but send that through the mail to the colleges. And I had a tendency, like, I leaned a lot when I pitched, so I had some bad form that I worked really hard to fix, but never got great. So I remember my dad being like, do we really want to send a video of you pitching? Because I don't think that's going to be good. And I was like, you do have a good point. So I don't think we actually ended up sending any videos because we were worried that like it might not be the best recruiting aid for me myself. So we spent more time actually trying to like make sure we had really good stats and could show like who we were playing, what tournaments we were playing in, and what my ERA was, my walk to strikeout ratio, like that kind of stuff. So we could send constantly to coaches like, this is what I'm doing, this,
Yeah.
and so that they could be like, okay, well, this girl, like, she wins a lot and they don't score many runs off of her, so we got to go see her. And that's kind of where we focused. So we sent tons of emails, and and invited them to tournaments and stuff like that. And so when we would go to the bigger tournaments, like the Colorado tournaments, we lived in Colorado, so it was easy, but every year we were in the fireworks / sparkler big tournament, lots of college coaches. And then the ASA Nationals, which also had lots. And, we would just try to invite as many coaches to the games. And we've tried to play good teams, because if a coach is watching, Taylor over here on this team who's really good, they're recruiting her to hit, and then she's hitting off of me and I'm striking her out, or I'm not letting her get hits, like then the coach is like, oh, who's this person? So like we always wanted to play good competition. So that even if someone wasn't really coming to watch me, but coming to watch someone on the other team, then they see our team, so we that was important as well, as being in good tournaments with good teams to play against.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to any camps. I went to like the local one, Colorado State, like camp, but like, I don't think camps were as big as they are now. I think now, from what I learned over the years and what my girls are going through now, especially if you've had a lot of contact with a coach, like they are emailing you or they've seen you play and you can go to their camp, that gives you the opportunity for them to kind of get to know you, talk to you, see you a little bit more, see your work ethic. I think that's great. So I think that's good too. And then now I've learned that Twitter is really big for recruiting, but I know really not much about that because I never had a Twitter. I recently got one because the parents told me to share when their kids share stuff, because it helps more coaches see more stuff. I'm like, you got it. But I guess they use Twitter a lot too. So, yeah. But again, I think it's for videos and stuff, which I guess is essentially the same thing as what we used to do, but we had to mail the video. So, so I think, that's different. But it was a lot of pressure to like have all those coaches sitting there in the stands watching you. It's a tough couple, I guess 2-ish years of, feeling like you're on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
But the one thing I think I would say is I think everyone feels that they have to perform really well. And I think coaches also want to see how you handle when you fail. Yep. So you don't have to go out there and pitch great, or, I always talk about pitching, but hit great or whatever. If you have a bad game, that's okay too, but they want to see how you react to that. Like, how are you treating your teammates? Are you throwing your helmet? Are you lifting up your teammates? And then how are you with your dad who comes over after the game? Do you blow him off? Are you guys fighting? Or are you like they watch you. And so they want to see that too. So, I've had girls be like, I pitched really bad. There were coaches there and they're probably not interested anymore. And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily true. Like they want to see how you handle that, because you're not going to win every game. So I think that's important for everyone to know too, is like to just show who you are as an athlete, win or lose. And don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to win all the time, because that's just unreasonable.
Yeah. I try to tell the girls that are in the recruiting process with me and doing their thing that you're going to fail. It's a part of the game. And believe it or not, coaches want to see you fail because they want to see how you respond. Now, if you're up there and you're mowing girls down, you may not be playing the right competition. So we need to step it up. If you give up a home run, it's not the end of the world. They want to see how you bounce back. Can you strike this next girl out? Or do you, tap your chest, say, hey, that's on me, I hung one, something like that.
Right.
or
Yeah.
hey, she just busted it. She got my fastball. Try to blow it by her, she got me. It's that type of mentality now. But just like when you were going through the recruiting process, you got to get in front of those coaches. We can do the social media stuff and we can do all that. You got to get in front of those coaches, and they've, like you said, you've got to figure out how you can get your personality across to them and to see if it works. And
Yes.
that's just how it is. Can you take me back to the first time you stepped on the collegiate field and your first competition as a collegiate softball player?
Yeah. Um, it was definitely a step up. I remember actually talking to my parents about like what I felt the biggest difference was. And the biggest difference for me was, and again, it's going back in the pitching direction, but a lot of teams that you'd play in travel ball, you'd have, 1 through 5, maybe 4, depending on the team you're playing in the batting order, were like rock solid hitters, right? So you had to be like on point getting through those kids to try not to get them to score runs. And then usually the end of the lineup, you could get through a little bit easier, right? So like what I found when you got to college was just like every single kid in that lineup was the best hitter on their team, right? Like they're all like the number 4 hitter or the like super awesome slapper, So you have like these 2 girls in the front who are like these super fast bunt slap, probably can power hit too half the time hitters. Then you get these meat and potatoes girls who are like the best hitters ever. And then you get the end of the lineup girls who are also amazing, good slappers who are super fast that were the best on their team. So, the whole lineup is like the best players. So you just had to be on point like the whole time. I struck out more people when I was younger. As I got older, it became more of I just need to get them off balance, weak contact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I remember my coach that recruited me. So I played for Coach Holly April. She's now the head coach at Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
But when I remember she told me, she's like, I recruited you because when I watched you play, you didn't give up solid hits. You always produced weak contact. And so like she's like, girls just like don't hit her very hard. So I had to realize like that was my role, was to like, you have a defense behind you, right? Your coaches recruited the best girls they could to play shortstop and center field. So you need to just rely on what you're good at, spot the pitches, move the ball, and hopefully we're getting weak contact, and then your team has your back, right? So it became a little bit less of feeling like all the pressure, was don't let up any runs. Like, no, you've got a team to back you up. Like they're going to hit the ball and that's okay. They're good. And just try not to give up too many good hits, right? That's more what it turned into. So that's what I noticed was the biggest difference for me, was just the quality of play has, it rose and you had to compete at that higher level.
Did you have any nemesis in your college days? It just seemed like no matter what, there's probably somebody in conference play or somebody that you played. It's just like, man, it's a battle every time she's in the box.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't anyone specific that I like remember that stands out, but there were obviously some teams that were pretty good, like Notre Dame, that or when we would travel in the beginning of the season and go down south and play teams like Georgia Tech and Texas and stuff like that. Like those were probably some of my favorite games because we weren't expected to win, but I was sure as heck wanted to try, and I wanted to see how we could do and how we could compete, and I really enjoyed those games. And then for me, because I played at Pitt, so it was always that Pitt Penn State. We weren't in the same conference, but that's a rivalry. 35 members of my family went to Penn State. And then I went to Pitt. And I remember my grandma told me, as long as you don't play football, I'm like, not a problem. But, that was huge actually. And, so that was an important rivalry for me, just with my family. But I believe it was the first game I ever pitched against Penn State. We did win, and that was the first time Penn State lost to Pitt. So I remember telling my grandma, I was like, see, it's okay. I did all right.
You'll always have that memory. That's awesome. That's
really yeah.
Cool. Well,
but yeah, that was probably the bigger one for me.
Before we get out of here, I did want to get your opinion on sort of the state of the college game. and where you see it and the popularity and the rise and kind of what social media, but also the TV eyes have really done for the sport, and the popularity has risen so much when you look at tournaments like the Mary Nutter that's now like on Flow Softball, or the tournament down in St. Pete to kind of get the season kind of kicked off, and then how well the coverage is within the conference and stuff. How excited are you for the game of softball and its popularity?
I think it's amazing. I mean, when I remember playing in one game that was on TV, one, and we didn't have like not even our conference games like at our home field. We just had the little game changer with the dots on the computer that my parents could watch. There wasn't even like a live feed. That has changed so much. And I think it's so cool because, you know, when I was in middle school and high school, I really could only watch the College World Series that would come on TV, you know, at the end of the season. That you couldn't watch anyone's conference games or anything like that. I think it's so much more accessible. I think you can just see how much the girls love to play. And that truly is how softball has always been in my experience. It's fun to watch. There's a lot of enthusiasm. And for it to be on TV, and then I think it was last year, it was like one of the most watched college sports, like behind maybe football or something. It was amazing. It did so well.
You pull numbers.
I know it does. And, you know, my husband got into watching it after, you know, he met me, and like, you know, I think it just pulled so many people in. People love it. It's exciting. And what's cool is the girls get to see, like when they're younger, get to see these older girls play, which I think is awesome. And it's, you know, something that when I was growing up, you didn't get to see as much. So I think it's helped the game grow. And I think the girls see like more of a future and like how cool that college experience can be. Whereas, you know, before it was, you know, something you wanted to do, but I didn't get to see much of it. So it was, you know, I didn't have as much, I guess, to like look forward to from such a young age. At like 10 years old, these girls, I mean, I always give this as an example. I had a girl who came in for her pitching lesson, and she stood there and she started wiggling her arm. And I said, "Are you doing your Geordie Ball?" And she's like, "I am. She's my favorite pitcher." And, you know, she's 10. And you know, to have that exposure and to have those girls like look up to these girls at such a young age, I think is so cool. And I just love where it's going. And I think it gets, you know, more kids involved. So I think it's really cool.
Did you have anyone in particular that you looked up to, or you tried to, you know, maybe imitate, or, you know, who was your
Yeah,
go-to?
I had two people that I really looked up to. One was my pitching coach. My pitching coach was Stephanie Clevetter. She played for Minnesota, and then she actually got to play on like a USA team. She competed against the Olympic team in like 2001 or something. Like she was pretty amazing, and she happened to move to Fort Collins, Colorado, and start working for Triple Crown. And that's where she still is now. She's like the director of softball something with Triple Crown. Wow. So she was just like this amazing person with this great history that moved into my hometown and gave me pitching lessons. So I had such a great role model to look up to. And when I go to the NFCA conference, she's usually there, so I get to, you know, meet up with her. But then I also was a very big Kat Osterman fan. I got to watch her play on TV in the World Series when I was in high school. And so she, you know, her and Monica Abbott was also the person that was, you know, very popular during that time. But I got to see the two of them play a lot. And those were the people I looked up to that I thought were really amazing. So, you know, those would have been my two, I guess.
You got like Kat Osterman too. A lot of people is like larger than life, but people don't realize how tied to the Texas Bombers she is. I mean, she is their pitching instructor. Like she's their pitching. I don't want to say the word guru, but I mean that's what she's even, you know, down on the travel ball level, which Texas Bombers are probably one of the top 5, top 10, depending on where you're from, who you are.
Yeah.
So I mean, these athletes that are giving back, a lot of athletes like yourself that are just coming straight back and in some capacity continuing to grow the game as ambassadors. And, you know, we had talked before, a messenger via email stuff, talking about getting on the podcast and doing an episode. And talking to you and other ambassadors, I'm so thankful, but we're so lucky as coaches, and the players are so lucky to hear it from you, because nowadays kids are able to watch it and see it on TV, and they can actually reach out and touch you guys and be like, hey, you know what? They've gone through it and they've done it, and I want to be just like them. What does it mean to you to be an instructor and to be involved in, to shape and mold these lives of some of these youngsters out here, knowing that, hey, you know what, some or all of y'all are going to have doors open up and have these opportunities to chase your dreams like I did?
Yeah. Um, it's overwhelming at times. Like I work with close to like 100 kids, and you know, some of them want to be super competitive. Some of them just want to not stink at rec ball. And when from the kid who comes in that just runs in to tell me that they struck someone out and they were so excited because it's the first time they've ever done that, to the girl who's like earning college softball scholarship and winning their state championship for high school, that it's really, really cool. It's really exciting. It's awesome to be a part of. Last year I had the opportunity that, one of my girls did win her West Virginia state championship for high school. And I won that in Colorado my senior year. And so I remember what it was like to go through, being your high school state championship, and how cool that was to then go watch her play her high school state championship and watch her win, and her crying and the excitement and all of that, and watch it happen again. It was just so cool because I knew how she felt. Like, I remember it. And, I was holding back my own tears, and it was just such a cool experience. And then, to add on to that, like, my mom came with me because I had to drive kind of far to West Virginia. And she said it was so cool to like watch you win your championship. Now sit here and watch your student win her championship. And she's like, it's like this full circle. You just feel so good about the whole, sharing what you went through, sharing all the knowledge, to help that student, and I'm sure that's how my coach felt when she watched me win my championship too. So, it's just this really nice feeling to help those kids out and be a part of it. They feel like they're all like my own children. Like, I feel bad when they lose. I want them to win. I'm proud of them when they do. Like, it's just, they're my kids too, honestly. It's just how it feels.
At Alabama, Coach Murph has got that word munita. I think that's how you say it. That's how I say it, at least. But it's the definition of it is really actually pretty simple. It's caring and loving what someone else is doing because of their passion, and being able to see someone and just celebrate them and feel good for someone else, and because their experience, stuff like that. And it's people like you that you help others reach different levels and go further than they probably could have. And for it to hit you, it hits me the same way when a kid tells me they've got a home run or they've done this or they've done that. There's no better feeling in the world than to watch someone experience joy. And it's almost like you can feel that for them, but like, you don't care whatever their joy is about or whatever. It's just that they have this feeling, and like, it makes me feel, I got it from my mom. But it's just like when you get to see someone experience that, like, celebration or whatever, it'll give you cold chills.
It does. I mean, I think anything, whether it's sport, music, whatever, when you achieve something, you do really good at something, it's such a good feeling. Like, I love when I do something really well, and I know what that feels like. So when you see someone else do that and they did something so good and they're so happy and so proud, it's a great feeling. And I think that's why people go outside their box to like do things that might be hard, or because if you can do it, it's an amazing feeling. And so seeing that, I love watching other people achieve stuff. I think it's so cool.
I do too. That's literally the reason why I share other people's content. Like, when they're successful and they're doing stuff and they're affecting people the right way, or they're influencing people the right way, it's not like I'm not in competition with Coach Cory and she said this and I have to hate her because I didn't come up with it. It's like, no, I love that. I'm going to share this because this is awesome. Or from anybody. Like, Coach Steinman or some of the like Megan Rimblack that does Megan softball. Like if she puts
Mhm.
out something good, I'm going to share it. I reached out to
Yeah.
her and said, hey, I know you got your practice plans coming up here soon. Do you mind if I do a small piece on that and share it? She's like, no, go for it. So before I'd sent it out, made it public, I sent it to her. She's like, hey, awesome. I love this. Thank you so much. And boom, there it is. If it helped her in some way, awesome. But I did it just to let her know the effect that she has on me and what I do.
Yeah, no, the more I think people can come together and lift each other up and share good. I mean, I tell my girls all the time, like sometimes they come to me for private pitching instruction, but there's a pitching coach that helps like the team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as long as we're like kind of teaching the same stuff, we're on the same wavelength, which hopefully is the case.
Yeah.
They might just say something differently. Like they're trying to tell you the same thing I've been telling you for weeks, but they say it differently than I said it. And suddenly you have that light bulb moment and you get it. It's fantastic. I don't care what it took, but it got you to do it. So, you can learn from other people.
Right.
That's why I love going to the conventions and listening to other pitching instructors and learning a new drill or a new way of saying something, because if that can help me reach a kid with something different that I hadn't tried before, that only helps me make that kid better. So whether it came straight out of my brain or it came from this person's brain who taught me and I can teach them, that's fine, as long as that they're getting, what they need so they can succeed.
Yeah.
So I love when kids have different coaches and learn different things from different people. I mean, everything I've learned was from a coach from somewhere, right? I mean, like I might have come up with a few drills on my own and things like that, but I'm doing drills that my coaches did and that's their coaches taught them. And it's kind of this thing that's passed down
Mm-hmm.
from years. I mean, Cindy Bristow at I think it's Riverside, something like that. She's the coach there. She helped coach my pitching coach, and when she played with the USA team, and then she helped coach me. And so you have like, Cindy Bristow, who speaks at the NSCA conference and does a lot of the pitching instruction there, who was coaching my pitching coach, who now coached me, and then I coach these girls. Like, it's this lineage almost that comes down where everyone's teaching from someone else that taught them,
Yeah.
right? So it's pretty cool.
I love it. We like when we look inside the community, it's a big old community, but on the outside of it, softball's not that big. But man, there's a
No.
bunch of us involved in some
Oh, yeah.
capacity. People have asked me like, why do you do it and this and that? And well, God knows it's not for the money. I love the sport. I love everything that comes with it.
Yeah.
I love the people that I'm able to reach out and talk to and just share that information, whatever it is. What do have going on right now that's like, as we're this time it's January, there's not a whole lot of competition going on, but what do you have planned that continue to kind of continue what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, right now I'm just giving a ton of lessons. That's what I typically do day in and day out. I really like the one-on-one working with kids. Um, I've done clinics and stuff in the past. I don't dislike them. But I like to work with kids individually. So I do a lot of lessons every week, and and then I try my best to create really good relationships with the kids. I want to get to know them. So then I try to do other things with the kids too. I try to go watch them play. I'll set something up this year. I think it's closer, but we like went and watched Pitt play as a group last year. We try to have like things that we do together at times. Something I'm looking into actually more recently now is I kind of want to look into someone in the area who's like a good dietitian, because I kind of want them to talk to my kids and my parents about like fueling themselves as an athlete, because that's something I've noticed as I work with the kids. Like, we're doing pitching stuff, but a lot of them, like when they start telling me, about random things, I find out things about them. Like they either their eating habits or like different. And sometimes I'm like, oh, we got to work on this because this is important too. Because to be an athlete, right, you have to sleep, you have to fuel yourself. Working out outside of softball, I really was pushing all the girls with needing to start workout plans and reaching out to different people in the area who could, help my kids with that stuff too. So I don't want it to always just be pitching focused. I want them to be well-rounded, athletes. The importance of school as well. And so, just trying to get to know them and help them as much as I can, in pitching, but also outside of that too.
Yeah. Well, Cory, I appreciate you joining me today. Before we get out of here, the last thing I wanted to make sure we kind of send home is the mental side of the game and kind of your message to pitchers and the parents about how important it is to have that mental toughness and to work on that. It's not something that you can conquer and say, hey, I'm mentally tough. It's something that you have to continue to work on, especially as a pitcher, being in that circle where all eyes are on you. And it seems like if the team loses, the failures on this pitcher because they weren't able to get, things done. So speak on mental toughness just a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm really big about talking about resiliency. You have to have the ability to, everyone's going to fail. So it's going to happen, but you have to be able to push through those obstacles, right? And find a way to keep going after you've failed. And so, I think it's kind of twofold. I think there are a lot of parents these days who, when their kid is failing or not doing well, it's really easy for them to say, they're not playing on this team, I'm switching them to this team. Complaining about playing time, and in some cases it might be legit. There might be some sort of underlying thing going on, but there's also, I remember growing up where my dad, if I wasn't doing well or I was unhappy with playing time or something, he would tell me, well, number one, get better. Number two, go talk to your coach. So he would push me to have conversations with my coach. He would have me find out what I need to get better at. I would go practice and work harder and earn the spot. He'd be like, be so good that your coach is not going to not play you, right? Compete for that. And I think I do see a lot of if we're unhappy, we'll just go somewhere else. And if it's for reasons that are not just about playing time, or skill level, maybe, I do understand that, because you might not get along with a coach or might have an issue with a teammate or something. But if we're just feeling like our daughter should be playing shortstop, but someone else is playing shortstop, I think you're not teaching that kid to, get better, work harder, practice more, be more, because, a lot of times you can fight for those positions if you put in the work for it, So I'd love to see parents teach their kids to fail and work harder and earn stuff, not just kind of well, we'll just find you a team where you'll be the shortstop or whatever. But I also think, the kids need to have the want to practice on their own too, right? So I have a lot of girls that they don't practice unless mom takes them outside to go practice. Well, that's really not acceptable. If you want to be this great athlete, if you want to play, you have to want to go do it. And, at 10, sure, 12, my dad had to tell me to go practice. It's fine. I'm a little kid. But once you're 13, 14, 15, if you're not doing it on your own, you don't want to go practice, then you need to recognize that within yourself, that you're not pushing yourself where you should be. So then don't expect to be that starting player because you're not putting in the work. So I think that mental state of kind of understanding what it takes to be a high level athlete, what work you have to put into it, that mental side is as important as the side of having a bad game or failing and pushing through it. You have to be able to understand both of those aspects. And, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And I know that's the cliche quote, but you have to go work hard and you have to push through it and you have to bounce back if you have, a bad game or something. So I think that's really important. And also to remember that this is a game. It's a game. It's supposed to be fun. You play it because you enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it anymore, that's a red flag too. So, but at the end of the day, it's a game and you're privileged to have the opportunity to play the game. Some kids don't have that opportunity. And, just go out there and love it. You have to love it first, and then you can move from there.
Wow. Cory, it has been a blast. I'm so glad we're able to do this. I'm glad you came on and we were able to kind of share our experiences and talk about that. You have a great story. I'm going to make sure I have all your stuff linked down below so people can find you and get a hold of your stuff. I want to do this again. and have you on maybe a little bit into the season, the college softball season. We kind of talk about kind of what's going on and stuff like that. I wish you nothing but success, and thank you
Thank
again for
you.
joining me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I look forward to another one.
All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. Big time shout out to Coach Cory for joining me today. What a great ambassador, what a great mentor, and just what an all around great person, right? If you haven't checked her out on Facebook yet, please do so. I'm going to leave the link down in the description below, and also we're going to link her website too. Go check that stuff out, man. She's doing great things. If you guys haven't yet subscribed to our channel over here, please do so. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss another episode. And if you share this, share it with a friend. And when you do, tell them you love them.